You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
I don't know what it was about the 2019 Hellboy, but for some reason, I just couldn't get into it. And if you like that version, you are completely valid, because I heard it's pretty accurate to the source material. But on that, I want to say that even if something is accurate to the source material, it can still be executed poorly and be bad. Luckily, Hellboy the Crooked Man is both accurate to the source material and a pretty good movie overall. I know a lot of people think it looks like a cheap fan film, and in some ways it absolutely is. But it's also a fun-ass time. Even with the fan-filled vibe, the story, sound design, and execution of this movie make it a well-done adaptation in my book. In order for me to get to my reasons as to why I believe this movie doesn't deserve the hate it's been receiving, we have to go over the plot. So with that, let's get into it. The movie opens in the 1950s with Hellboy smoking a cigarette out the door of a poorly CGI train. He's transporting a demonic spider that's the most dangerous arachnid in the world, and he's accompanied by Bobby and this no-name dude. And this begs the question, if it's so dangerous, why is it just in a plain wooden box? As they cross the Appalachian Mountains, something evil in the area makes the spider grow really big and break out of the wooden box. No shocker there. The eight-legged freak eats the no-name guy, and then Hellboy and the spider engage in fisticuffs. All the fighting throws the train off the tracks, and as the cars tumble down the side of the mountain, Hellboy continues his fight in the woods. This is probably the worst looking part of the entire movie, and it's due to how unnatural it looks as Hellboy is running away from the spider. There's no depth of field, so I can't tell how far or close the stupid thing actually is. It ends when Hellboy stabs it a bunch with a stick before it shrinks back down and escapes through some random grate in the woods. The whole opening with the spider is the worst in terms of CGI. The spider fight was a bold move on this movie's $20 million budget, but I do really like how this is just a soft opener to what we're actually in for. Bobby is a new character not from the comics, and is also a rookie agent who has never done field work before. She is surprisingly well written and a nice point of view character as we go through this dark and weird world. Hellboy tells her that there are dark things in these woods, and dark things call out to other dark things. As they make their way through the woods, they come across a house, and the lady says that she recognizes Hellboy from a United Nations article. In her house is a boy that stupidly messed with a witch named Cora, and she's the only one that can reverse the hex she placed on him. A guy named Tom Ferrel, no relation to Will, he comes inside the house and shows Hellboy a witch ball which he found on his doorstep. Now, a witch ball is imbued with black magic to enact a curse upon whomever the witch strikes with it. So basically, pretty bad news. Tom says he's going to see Cora, so Bobby thinks it would be a good idea to go with him, but Hellboy is a little more reluctant. She ultimately convinces him, and our newly formed trio sets off to see a witch about some balls.
What did he say?
We then cut to Grammy Oakham telling us how to make a witch ball, which involves dancing around naked while also collecting a bunch of gross animal parts. Even though Cora put a spell on the boy they just met and is clearly dangerous, the three just walk into her house calling her name. Tom feels so comfy doing this because back when they were kids, they were sweethearts, and he still has the hots for her. Instead of finding Cora though, they find more witch balls, a weird bug in a jar, and Cora's skin sack. Tom brushes this off, saying she's out roaming around? Bro, what? Is shedding skin and roaming around like a common thing in these parts? I know I'm valid in feeling this way because Bobby, the normal person in the trio, is also freaked out by the shedding of the skin thing.
Vindication!
Tom continues by telling Hellboy and Bobby that 15 years ago, he saw a girl named Effie Kolb washing blood off her arms in a stream. Elfie got him mixed up in all the witch mumbo jumbo, and she also convinced him to make a deal with the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man was rumored to be the first European white man that came to this place hundreds of years ago. He played both sides during the Civil War, resulting in him being a rich man, but in the end, he was hanged because he was also a bad man. The Crooked Man came back from hell to claim souls for the devil in order to be rich once again. Seeing the Crooked Man scared Tom straight out of the witch stuff and right into a war, which I'm guessing was the Korean War. Another important thing to know about Tom is that he has a lucky bone from his almost making a deal with the Crooked Man moment, and the bone comes up a lot because it kind of keeps saving his life over and over again, almost like it won't let him die. Cora returns in the form of a raccoon before putting her skin suit back on and wailing because apparently this process is also super painful. She tells Tom that all the local witches are coming for her because they want her soul. Effie shows up on a horse and warns Tom that the Crooked Man has unfinished business with him before she leaves, and the horse she rode in on transforms into Tom's father. He's pretty fucked up though, and shortly after transforming back into a man, he then dies in Tom's arms. The little bug that Cora had in a jar gets free and starts sucking her blood, so Hellboy promptly squashes it against a tree. The next morning on foot, Tom, Bobby, Cora, and Hellboy head off to a local church in order to bury Tom's father. On the way, Bobby keeps notes about the adventure and asks Cora about hexes. Cora tells Bobby that a hex has to come from your heart and be super sad in order for it to work. Moments later, Cora lets out a scream, and when Hellboy comes running around the corner, he sees her floating in the air. A giant snake tangles her up and gives her a nasty bite before waving her around like a dog with a chew toy. Hellboy and the snake fight for a second, Hellboy gets a bite of his own, and then he crushes the thing in his bare hand. He passes out, and when he wakes up, he's in a weird dreamscape where he finds Cora looking at his mom. She tells him that his mom tried to get out of paying for her sins by making a deal with the devil, and bing bang boom, emphasis on the bang, am I right?
Stop it. Get some help.
And through that, Hellboy is born. Hellboy wakes up with a slight headache, while Cora, on the other hand, vanishes right in front of Tom. The now trio continues to the church, where a blind reverend is just praying. I've always wondered what pastors and reverends do Monday through Saturday, since their job is really just a once-a-week thing. It's not like they need to study, they should memorize the Bible. It's basically their instruction manual. Plus, if I can on a whim talk about anything Star Wars related for an hour, I feel like pastors don't have an excuse to not do the same with God and stuff. Especially because it doesn't look like anyone is going to this church, except maybe this weird zombie-looking lady that Bobby spots out the window. The Reverend warns them that the Crooked Man is at his strongest when it's dark, and then magically, and unfortunately, the sun goes down. Effie reappears to mess with Tom some more by telling him that all his friends are going to die and it's his fault. Tom decides to go outside to face her, and our title character, the Crooked Man, makes his appearance. And he kind of looks like Leprechaun from the horror movies mixed with Scrooge. Not the duck one, the human Scrooge one. The Crooked Man makes a deal with Tom that involves trading Tom's lucky bone for their freedom. But just as he goes to give it to him, Hellboy steps in and is more like, no, you seem really creepy and I don't trust you. The Crooked Man then tries to make a deal with Hellboy by saying that if he kills Tom, he'll stop Hellboy's mom suffering in hell. And since Hellboy's kind of young in this, he has a I don't have time for you because you're an old man kind of attitude towards the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man doesn't take Hellboy's rejection very well, so he starts hurling spears into his body, which is very similar to the scene in the 2019 one. We get a pretty cool sequence where the Crooked Man tries to mess with the Reverend by making him young again, but not even that is enough to make this man break. Turns out that the people buried on the grounds of the church are all sinners, so they come back as zombies and rush into the church. A shootout takes place as Hellboy uses his gun to dispose of the living dead one by one in a pretty good little action bit. Tom's father also comes back to life, which results in Tom knocking him out with a shovel with a good bonk, just to be safe. Using the power of his bone, Tom blesses the shovel that buried all the undead, putting an end to all of them. Hellboy uses the shovel to smack the Crooked Man, causing an explosion of light and him waking up the next day. The shovel beatdown apparently weakened him, so Tom and Hellboy set out to finish the job. Bobby, on the other hand, comes up with a plan to hurt the Crooked Man by using a hex on the mine shafts because that's where he draws his power. Back in the day, the mine collapsed, killing a ton of people, which is why the area is so full of evil. The Reverend and Bobby get attacked by a swarm of crows, but for some reason he stays behind to swat at them with the shovel. He gets lifted up like a symbol of Christ and then killed, while Bobby Bobby is able to get away. Hellboy and Tom reach an old house in the woods and start poking around for the Crooked Man. Tom ends up getting tormented some more by Effie, but he's able to get the upper hand when he uses his magic bone to blow her out a window. Hellboy gets a visit from his mother and works through his mommy issues and admits that he hates himself and not her. Meanwhile, Bobby has stumbled into the spider from the opening, but with her newly discovered hex powers, she defeats it and then passes out. When she wakes up, she puts the spider in a jar. Do not do that. Kill that thing. What the fuck? You don't need to take it back at this point. Mission's over, bro. Kill that thing. You saw what happened. What are you doing? Anyways, Tom and Hellboy reunite and search the house some more, and Hellboy finds the Crooked Man in a scene that might give you a seizure. The two fight some more, and Tom throws a witch ball in the Crooked Man's mouth, allowing Hellboy to get the upper hand. He taunts the duo, but Hellboy decides he's had enough and shoots him in the head, which explodes with coins. They find Effie cowering behind a tree, now aged as an old lady, and they just kinda leave her there. Should probably kill her too, just saying. I mean, she does turn into a horse and they write "I am a witch" on her, but I still don't feel like that's good enough. Everyone reunites at the church, and after a quick goodbye and a quick phone call, they're in a helicopter riding away. Truthfully, this movie doesn't deserve half the hate it's been getting. Yes, I know it doesn't look the best and the acting isn't always on point, but this feels so much like a contained story of weird and crazy shit that takes place in a large world of weird and crazy shit. I love when a movie has a story that is like a little side mission where you have a fun time and the final scene isn't trying to set up a sequel. Or worse, the whole movie feels like a giant setup for a sequel. I'm personally kind of tired of all of that. And honestly, my biggest complaint with Hellboy isn't the look or the acting. It's the thick as fuck southern accents that everyone has in this thing. Besides Hellboy and Bobby, I could barely understand what anyone was saying, that I had to start the movie over about 15 minutes in and turn on the subtitles. Jefferson White, who plays Tom, does an incredible job and sells the part so well throughout the entire plot. It's just sometimes the southern accent he has makes it a little hard to understand everything he's saying. And Jack Kesey, who bravely stepped into this role, does a pretty good job as Hellboy overall, but there are a couple times where it feels like he's putting on a Ron Perlman impression. Now, in order to see how close this was to the source material, I went out and read the Crooked Man Hellboy comic storyline. And this feels exactly like that comic brought to the big or kind of medium screen, I guess. My favorite part is that there's a United Nations article that acts as a backstory, and it's used as a framing device to mostly tell us about Hellboy without relying on a ton of flashbacks or just dumping a bunch of information at once. Plus, setting it in the 1950s works for so many reasons. Not having modern technology adds the urgency for them to get to a town and radio for their ride and help if they need it. The way people get their information is pre the internet, so it's all articles and newspapers, meaning there is crazy stuff in the world, just not everyone is able to access the news or hear about it. On top of that, throughout the movie, Hellboy smokes a cigarette and then eats it, which is cute, gross, and funny all at the same time. And with the small budget, they at least went all out on making Hellboy look as practical as possible, and he doesn't look like a terrible CGI mess. The only terrible CGI mess in this movie is that weird looking spider at the beginning. I think at the end of the day, this might be my second favorite Hellboy movie out of all of them. Either way, I really enjoyed this and stand by my decision to place Hellboy the Crooked Man in just plain good. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to check out my video on the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below what movie you'd like to see me cover in the future.